Sometimes it feels like the sun will never rise, like the birds will never sing again. Believe in a power greater than what you are going through. When you don't know what to do, keep breathing.
That's right. When you don't know what to do, just keep on breathing. From the city of Los Angeles, welcome to all my listeners out there in Radio Land. I'm Dave, the Caregiver's Caregiver, at caregiverdave.com. Typically along with my lovely co-host Carletta Cole at the Caregiver Safe Place, but she is doing hair right now. She's a hairdresser as well, and a caregiver. No, she's not a caregiver anymore. Her mother passed away. Anyway, we are also coming to you live and on demand on numerous syndicated radio and podcast networks on 26 global audio and video platforms like our iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Vimeo, and so many more. In fact, we're proud to be voted #1 caregiver podcast of the top 50 on Player FM, and #2 caregiver podcast on FeedSpot out of the top 60, and #2 on caringvillage.com. And we have an especially exciting show planned for you today. Those Parenting Adoptees, to be released in March of 2023. As an adoptive mom, her research includes interviews with adoptive parents, adult adoptees, doctors, and therapists. Became this new book to encourage, educate, and equip adoptive parents as well as adult adoptees. Robin Hitt is a life and business coach and a certified Daring Way Facilitator. She'll have to explain to us what that is. In the work of Dr. Brené Brown, and leads workshops on topics like imperfection, shame, vulnerability. She lives in Colorado with her husband and her labradoodles. Before we get started, I want to take this moment to thank my last week's guest, Dr. Christine Van Horn, author, teaching, and speaker. And she has been a certified emergency manager for 30 years and recently retired. Now, just a reminder, you can watch or listen to that interview and all our interviews, including this one, on our membership website, caregiverdave.com, or any of the other 26 global networks I mentioned earlier. All right, enough of that. Robin, welcome to the show. We're so happy to have you on.
Thank you for having me, Dave. Appreciate it.
I always like to ask our guest, just who is Robin Hitt and why was she placed on this earth?
Wow, that could take a while to figure that out, right?
Yeah.
But I kind of think I know a little bit now who I am. Okay. I'm a daughter. I am a retired RN. I used to work in ICU. Wow. I quit that to raise children because my husband flew for a living and somebody had to mind the store. So I was at home with them, our adopted daughters, and I started seeing things, that I didn't understand. So long story short, I researched, found out a whole bunch of stuff, and wrote a book called Open-Eyed Adoption. So that's kind of a synopsis. You wanted to know about the Daring Way. I also am a certified Daring Way Facilitator in the work of Dr. Brené Brown. And I lead workshops on topics like resilience, shame, vulnerability, and wholehearted living.
Wow. Now, for those burnout caregivers out there who are wondering how this topic has anything to do with them, explain why they should be interested in what you're going to talk about today.
I know what it is to care for loved ones. I've done it. I'm not working in the hospital setting anymore, but I took care of my dying mother and my dying mother-in-law. I've also been in numerous. Carletta
has joined us.
Hi, Carletta.
Hi, everybody.
Good to see you.
You as well. Sorry I'm late.
Well, that's okay.
So just, I'm coming today from a place of, I've been there, and the burnout in adoptive parenting as well as caregiving is pretty big. And that's kind of where I marry the two.
The B word, the burnout word.
Yes.
Yeah, not just caregivers are burned out. I mean, nurses are burned out.
Mhm.
Adoptive parents, you name it. And
Right.
in a way, adoptive parents are kind of caregivers, because they're caring for a special child who, maybe isn't used to. You don't know what trauma they've been through or what
Right.
previous parents had been through. So
Mhm.
yeah, great topic. So let's talk about the differences in adoptees versus biological children. Is there just a big difference right off the bat that if someone were observing one or the other, they could tell who was adopted and who was not?
No, typically not. And that's what catches adoptive parents off guard and by surprise. When we adopted our children at birth, we were told, go make a life. They're a clean slate. There's no memory. There's no, imprint yet. And so you just go and build your family. And I thought, oh, great. Well, I found out through years of raising them and things that they would say and do that I didn't understand what I was looking at. And after they left the home, it was even kind of more, I didn't understand what I was looking at. And I thought I would get a different outcome. So I began researching and I interviewed so many people, adoptive parents, doctors, therapists, even adult adoptees. And I found out, yes, all adoptees have trauma. I didn't expect it from birth. I thought, what could you have experienced? But come to find out, they are looking for the owner of the womb. And when they don't find that owner, they're put off, they're off their center. And I'm telling them I'm your mother, and they're right away, it sets up a mistrust that totally blew my mind because I was in 100%, never lied to them. I parented like I was parented, lots of love and opportunity, affection, and telling them often how much we love them. And I just didn't understand why I was getting the outcomes that I was. So yes, I know some people disagree with me, but I'm going to say boldly that all adoptees have trauma.
Wow, and it's like the animal world, right? If Bambi's mother gets shot,
Right.
and you try to be the mother, it's just not the same thing. And in the elephant world and in the bird world, any comments on that, Carletta? You have any experience with adoption?
I don't have any experience with adoption, but I do have experience with having a stepfather. And it's the same thing where you grow up and you're thinking, oh, this is my dad, my biological dad. And then when you get to an age of understanding, which is about 8 or 9, someone comes out and say, well, it's not really your dad, but it's your dad, and now you're on the search because you're like, well, who do I look like? Well, when I throw these tantrums, are these tantrums coming from my father's side? Because my stepdad is really calm. Where
And
did
you're
I
not.
come from? Right. So, I mean, not me personally, but I did have a stepdad, and I knew my stepdad was my stepdad, but it didn't matter to me. But when you tell these people or kids that, you are their biological or you are their parent, they don't distinguish between biological and a loving mother.
Right. And
Very true.
you bring up a good point, Carletta, because at what point do we tell the child that they're adopted? Some parents are waiting into their teen years before they mention. My mentor, Clint Arthur, he wasn't told until after he graduated college.
Yikes.
And he thought he'd go
That's
home and get the
devastating.
attaboys, and then they got into this big fight, and the father just left and slammed the door, and he says, "Gee, Mom, the way Dad treats you, it's like you were cheating on him." And he realized, did I really just say that? And but then she didn't answer him, and says, "He's not your real father."
Oh my goodness.
Says your real father is worked at the fertility clinic who helped us get And
Wow.
so when is a good time? And I'm a stepfather. Well, I married my wife, and she had a 5-year-old and 10-year-old, and I just took them on as my own. And the older one bonded with me very well because I was Prince Charming, rescuing them from the big bad wolf, the other father. And the middle one, I was a threat because where's my wonderful dad, who's such a wonderful person, which she didn't know, she was too young. But and she never really bonded and became a problem child.
Yeah, I think in answer to your question about when's the best time to tell them, yesterday. I mean, as soon as possible.
Really? They're not too young ever?
Because, well, here's the thing. I write about it in the book. And it's, we used to get care packages from their birth moms to our home full of gifts for them and a letter sometimes. And even though they didn't know them, we were instructed by the agency to say, I said, what am I going to say when these gifts come in the mail? Like, this is weird, And she said, tell them this is from the lady who you grew in her tummy.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, terrible English. And, but
weird.
But I literally said that to them, and they acted like, oh, they never said what is that? They never, ever acted like it was weird. And I thought, that's weird. So that was one thing that I was like, really? Intuitively that you came from someone else and that's from them. And that was kind of my number one thing, like head scratcher, So
but
yes, always.
Think about this. Think about the fact that at 3 years old, your memory bank starts to add up. So if your memory bank adds up at 3 years old, imagine how much knowledge, you can hold and understanding of things you can hold at 3 years old, so.
And I think,
that's not right.
I think even in a babe in arms has memory.
At least in the subconscious, because they say our subconscious has permanently recorded everything that's ever happened to them from the womb.
There you go.
They can hear, they can understand. I have a 2-year-old great granddaughter, and I'm amazed at how the progress of her gaining the language. It's like she knows the words and she's trying to speak them, and we can't understand them because she can't pronounce them properly.
Right.
But it's like she knows what she wants. She knows what she's saying, and we don't get it.
Right.
And it's like, wow! It's like the language is already developed in her head.
It's true.
My wife, who had a stroke and knows what she wants to say, but it just won't come out. Right.
Right. And that's the whole thing about. They know they came from somewhere else. They don't know where that person is. They're frustrated at times and they act out for no reason. You never know what you did or said. It's not about you. And they can't articulate. It's just what you said. They know something happened. There was a switcheroo, but they can't articulate. So when you're telling them, I'm your mom, it sets up a mistrust because they know somebody else was there first.
Yeah. So what do you know the statistics of how many kids are adopted or how many parents have adopted kids?
Not exactly, but there is a statistic that Adoption Network put out that currently in the U.S. there are 100 million Americans affected by adoption or impacted by adoption in their immediate families. And so that could be the birth parents, So it's just like caregivers. About a third of America are caregivers and about a third are adopted. So chances are a third of the listeners here either are adopted or have adopted kids or know people. And I've never heard anyone with your opinion about, telling them yesterday that they came in from somebody else's womb. That's in an attempt to establish trust.
Yeah.
I never wanted to lie, and I didn't. I never wanted to, kind of fake them out. And because I knew intuitively, even though I didn't know a lot when we adopted, I knew that trust was huge. And turns out it is.
Mm-hmm.
Your job is to. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's just your job is to form attachment and establish trust.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. And with that, it's almost like you want to just say, "Hey, I'm your second mommy," or I mean, I don't know. I'm your caregiver. I don't know at this point, but it will never stop them from grieving the loss of their mom or
That's
their
a
dad.
very good point, Carletta. I don't think I would say I'm your caregiver, because you want the family, you want to establish your family culture and values and all that. But to say and acknowledge you came from somewhere else, we honor them. Yes, we honor them for their decision to, because they couldn't take care of you, it doesn't mean they don't love you. And so the older they get, we offered to help facilitate them meeting at one point. But the grief is very real in the child. And especially as they grow, at first they're kind of like, if you're going to feed me, okay, or I mean, I'm talking about an infant. And if you adopt a child that's been elsewhere, like, 2, 3, 4, 5 and up, they've been somewhere else. So you know that, okay, they've been through something. But the grief that they feel is an ambiguous loss. And by that, I mean, what could have been, what might have been, maybe even what should have been. Why
they don't want me? Why they don't like me? What did I do wrong?
It sets up that rejection.
Yes.
Right.
And that abandonment.
Yes.
Yes. I've always heard that that adopted, you tell your child who's adopted that they're very special because, we don't have control over who God puts in our womb,
Right.
And sometimes we wouldn't necessarily choose that child.
Right.
But we chose you.
Right.
We knew what we were getting when we chose you. In natural birth, you never know what you're getting, And the Bible is a great analogy of adoption because really, we were adopted into God's family. He chose us.
Right.
And so we're very, very special.
Yes. Yes, we did use that narrative to a degree. You never know what you're getting. When you open a gift, you never know what's inside,
Even
until you open
child, you never know.
Exactly. Yeah. But I could always say we deeply wanted you and still do.
Right. Now, let's talk about shame. Shame. Go ahead, Carletta.
So how are they now? Like, are they still in touch with you? Do they?
Oh, yes.
I mean, I've always wanted to know that. Like, have they reached out to their biological parents, and how does that work after they become adults?
It works like the kid wants it to work, is how it does. If they don't want to meet, they don't. We have encouraged ours to reach out and meet their birth moms. We've met both of their birth moms so far. They're ages 32 and 29 right now, and they've not wanted to do that. I think, and when I've interviewed other adoptive kids, adults, they say the thing that I fear most is that she'll want more than I can give. That's the number one fear in all adoptees. They're curious, but they're like, I don't know. I'm barely making it myself with all my relationships. I'm afraid that it's going to really wreck my life. They're going to expect so much. But honestly, I feel, and again, I've told both of them, and yes, we are close, but I've told both of them, it's your call. I do think it would really help fill in some gaps if you can get to that place. But I also, having said that, feel like it's their call. It's their readiness. It's nothing that people should be pushed into doing.
Talk about shame and guilt, and how does that play a part in this?
Yes. Okay. So shame and guilt are a part of life, right? And the difference in shame and guilt is guilt says I did something bad, and shame said I am intrinsically bad. Now, how are you going to fix shame? If you feel like I am bad, it's really hard to overcome that. If you do something bad, you can make amends, you can write it, you can pay, you can do whatever, apologize. But if you feel like I am bad, it's really hard to come back from that. And so this happens, shame happens in the birth mom for obvious reasons. They feel shame about getting pregnant when they weren't ready for a child. They feel shame about giving their children, releasing them for adoption. They feel shame for their whole lives many times. I've talked to many birth moms and, years and years later, they feel that way. The child feels shame because something is intrinsically wrong with me or they wouldn't have given me up. That's their narrative. That's like talkie all the time, telling their heart that. So they carry shame. The adoptive parents feel shame because they gave everything they had and didn't get the expected outcome. Thinking like one expected outcome would be, oh, my children, they don't need any other person. They're happily well-adjusted people. And they're just so thrilled to be a part of our family that they don't need anybody else. Well, okay, but what happens is the adoptive parent feels shame for that. Like I should have done a better job. Must have been something, about me that couldn't come up to the bar. Well, the way we handle guilt is kind of obvious. If I did something bad, I make amends however I can. But if I am bad, if I believe I am bad, what are we going to do? Well, fortunately, there's remedy. Empathy and self-compassion are the remedies to that. And I talk about self-compassion, even with caregiving. I know that's what you guys talk about most on the show. And caregiving is, you can have shame there too, because you feel like I'm not doing it well enough, or I'm really angry at this person, it's infinite, right? The reasons that we can come to shame, but self-compassion is part of that, is acknowledging our own humanity and giving ourselves permission to have a bad day or to feel down or to be tired or even exhausted. But self-compassion is a little different than self-care. You talked about sending people to Acapulco or Mexico or somewhere to just sort of, have the day. Or maybe somebody like me would go get a massage. Okay, that's self-care. Maybe a cappuccino is self-care, or a glass of wine. But self-compassion is more like what we feel about us as we're going through life. So self-compassion might be to say, I've had a really rough day today. I do love this person. I'm doing the best I can. And even tell yourself, I love you. That's a weird concept, for a lot of us, but we love ourselves. But if you don't love yourself, you can't pour from an empty cup. So it's that whole thing about, put your oxygen mask on first so you can help someone else. That's why self-compassion is so important. And then another way to combat shame is empathy. And that is, we just need to phone a friend sometimes and just sort of go, can I just unload for a little bit? You don't do that with just anybody. You pick somebody who's earned the right to hear your story. And they've walked with you a little ways and they believe the best about you and they want the best for you. That's who you choose to share your burdens with.
I'm thinking it must be very traumatic for a parent, a step parent, when their child starts asking questions. Well, can I meet my mother? Or, can we look her up? And like you said, all of a sudden, you mean I wasn't enough? You want more? What if and then they're thinking, what if you love them better than me? And what if you've been with them or whatever,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that goes into play as well. And we have to check our own expectations at the door. And we have to realize this is them working out their ambiguous loss or trauma or both. And it's not that, we can love a lot of people, and that doesn't take away, like I love my mother, I love my father, my kids used to say, which one's your favorite? And I say, well, which arm do you like the best? Your left or your right, And so we can love a lot of people without unloving someone else. Our hearts just grow with love. And that's what I have come to see, even if they someday do decide to connect with their birth moms, and I hope they will. I've already decided, it's okay and even probably beneficial for them to love them. And so, but that's sort of a growing into the thing, because I wasn't always there. I did feel kind of threatened by it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're out of time. Is there any
that went fast?
I know it goes fast when you're having fun. Why don't you tell us what you were hoping to cover that we didn't cover, and then how to get a hold of you and how to get your book and all of that stuff?
Yes. I think, the biggest takeaway is just that all adoptees have trauma, and we all have to care for ourselves so that we can do our best. We can show up our best for others. There's burnout in every field, and COVID didn't help that, right?
Yeah.
So, I think just even forgiveness is a huge part of all of this. Forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others, and so that we can be freed up, to live our best life. So my book is Open-Eyed Adoption, Real Help for Those Parenting Adoptees. And it is on Barnes & Noble right now for pre-order, and it comes out March 7th of this next year. And I'm at robinhitt.com. It's ROBINHITT.com.
That's great. And I want to remind everybody that all our live shows become recorded pod and video casts on your favorite platforms. And my newly released book, Secrets from the Hammock, Uncommon Wisdom for Uncommon Times, is changing lives all over the world, and it's available wherever books are sold, and also on my free membership website, caregiverdave.com. And join my Caregiver Facebook community of 34,000 caregivers on Facebook, and you'll learn all about our new Acapulco Villa Caregiver Wellness Vacation I'm offering to burned out caregivers to keep as many of those 30% of caregivers who die before their loved ones alive. And Carletta does something very similar. She helps caregivers get a replacement for the day or for the week or however long. Yeah. Go ahead and tell them briefly what you do, Carletta.
Well, you can follow me on Caregiver Safe Place on Facebook, Instagram. I am a caregiver respite donation person for family caregivers.
Yeah. And if you click the like or follow button on whatever platform you're watching or listening to this interview on, it helps us reach even more caregivers by improving Google's search engine algorithms. So thank you all, my listeners out there all over the world, for tuning in every Wednesday and making us the #1 caregiver podcast on the internet. So until next week, same time, same channel, may God richly bless you all. Bye-bye. I'm Dave Nasani. My 4th book, Secrets from the Hammock, Uncommon Wisdom for Uncommon Times, is a #1 bestseller on Amazon. As a young boy, I was told I possessed an unusual amount of wisdom for my age. As a young man, I found myself counseling friends and older family members whenever they needed answers to their problems. Then at 21, I read the Bible for the very first time, and learned how King Solomon asked God for wisdom instead of riches, yet he received both. I was so impressed that I too asked God for wisdom. Soon after, I discovered when lying on my hammock, I would receive wisdom from God. This book is the result of my passion to share with the world wisdom's tremendous benefits. Join me as I reveal practical aspects of wisdom for the mind, body, and spirit. 31 lessons I learned from God that can change your life. Available in hardcover, Audible, Kindle, and paperback, wherever books are sold. I've spoken all over the country and London, and am available to speak at your event. Contact me at hammockwisdom.com.
Sometimes it feels like the sun will never rise, like the birds will never sing.